So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where Napoleonic France comes back to the modern world. Napoleonic France was pretty strong in its prime, which was about 1812, and I have taken France from them and pumped them back down on the world map. Now this isn't perfect because they occupied Spain and they occupied parts going into Russia. But just for simplicity's sake, we're going to be leaving the military operation parts out of it. And they do still have the Prussia area, that was under their occupation, but I feel like it needs to be connected over here. But anyway, we're going to be seeing what Napoleon looks like with tanks and modern equipment. So if you guys do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. All the support is greatly appreciated. And let's go ahead and jump straight into the scenario. So Napoleonic France is back. They are in their prime at their peak, and now they have tanks and all the other fun stuff that comes with the modern world, like, you know, naval vessels, airplanes, jets, nuclear bombs too, but we're not going to be using those today. And I do want to say that Napoleonic France was a mess. Obviously, the Holy Roman Empire made that 10 times harder, and I did not draw in every single Holy Roman Empire state here because I ain't got time for that. And this map is not perfect at all, so please don't yell at me. But the first thing that Napoleon is going to do after coming back from the dead is immediately go after the rest of Latvia and Belarus. This is where Napoleon's armies were heading, more specifically towards Moscow, but they were in this general area, and on the modern day map, they are going to invade both of these countries and take them out. Now, they both are relatively weak from the amount of land that they lost to Lithuania and Latvia, so Napoleon will have little to no issue annexing this into his empire. These treaties are pretty simple. Belarus is kept off on its own as a vassal, and then we have Latvia being combined into one state. Oh, that's another thing. So Napoleonic France is in the dark red here, and then we have this lighter red here that is like the vassal slash puppet vassals, whatever they're called. And then the pink here is occupation, so Prussia is being occupied. Although since the coalition against France is no longer active, they can go ahead and officially integrate this into the Napoleonic Empire. And yeah, this thing is looking good. They're spanning all the way from over here in Spain to Belarus. So where does Napoleon want to go next? Well, in his own timeline, he had already kind of occupied Spain, so I believe that this makes the most sense. Oh, and also we're going to be ignoring a lot of NATO in this video because, you know, half the countries got blitzed by Napoleon, and it could be an interesting concept to keep the rest, but that would basically force Napoleon either against NATO or Russia because there's really no other neutral countries in Europe. Now, I guess he can go after Africa, but I don't think his intentions are there. So like I said, he's going to be invading Spain, and Spain was ready for this. They begin to invade the area of which France already occupies and goes into Catalonia. The Spanish move up the coast and have a lot of victories against the French armies, but up north, the same cannot be said as Napoleonic France is focusing in on this area. They shoot down towards Madrid and then cut over to Portugal, splitting Spain into two. They then wipe out this upper area in a series of military campaigns, but then their focus has to shift over here to Catalonia, where they are experiencing a lot of losses. Back over west, the Spanish push back, and they even push even further up north. That is until Napoleon himself arrives on the front line and leads his army in a tank to beat back the Spaniards. They are eventually pushed back all the way to their own border, and armies enter in on all sides, pushing towards Madrid and capturing the capital city. From here, Spain hangs around just for a little bit longer before eventually surrendering over to Napoleon's forces. And let's take a look at this peace treaty. And in this peace treaty here, Spain is made into a vassal slash vassal. Is it vassal or vassal? I think it's actually vassal. I just can't read. But Spain is made into a vassal, and France will take a little bit from the previous Spanish state, but that Spanish state is then merged with this new one. So they're going to take a little bit of land for their home country. This empire is still looking very nice. But people are going to be very wary of France because they don't really look like they're going to be slowing down at all. So the UK will form an alliance known as the French Resistance Alliance. And I'll probably just be calling them the Allies for short. But this is an alliance consisting of themselves, Portugal, Denmark, Romania, Bulgaria, and the remaining Italian islands of Sicily and Sardinia. So this will kind of gatekeep Napoleon from going after any of these blue countries, but of course they still have a ton of other options, and their next option is going to actually be Czechia, and poor Czechia does not stand a chance against Napoleon himself, and this country is blitzed through, losing Prague within a couple of days, and eventually they surrender, becoming a vassal of France. The next to fall will be Austria, who accepts an ultimatum because they simply don't want to fight back against the French, and the same is said for both Croatia and Slovenia. So Napoleon has definitely kind of thickened his empire down here in the northern Balkans slash southern central Europe, but the growing number of countries falling to him is influencing others to take action, and Slovakia and Hungary will both join in on the allies, and so too will Montenegro, Albania, and North Macedonia. Estonia will join, and that will do it for the next wave of countries joining the allies. So Napoleon has his armies in Paris, and he's like, yo, we're gonna chillax for a little bit, and they chillax for about a year, and a lot of the world is kind of like disengaged. You know, maybe Napoleon is done, his empire is huge, he takes over a majority of Europe, but maybe that's enough for him. No, it's not. After waiting a couple of years, Napoleon will launch an invasion on France. That is, oh my god, it's Sweden. I need to go to bed, apparently. Napoleon will cross the Baltic Sea and make a landing in southern Sweden, and this army is rejuvenated and is reimbursed by very many more troops. And the Swedes are having an extremely difficulty time stopping them from advancing. They blitz up the coastline, hurting Sweden's economy, and then they blitz over towards Stockholm, hurting the Sweden's government. The Swedes will hold out for a little bit longer as Napoleon's armies continue to advance northward, until eventually the government has no other decision than to surrender over to Napoleon. And let's take a look at this peace treaty between France and Sweden, where we see France fully annex the southern tip of Sweden, leaving the rest on its own and independent. But this Sweden is extremely weak, and they will ultimately decide to unionize with Norway, who is going to join the Allies. Now, originally, Norway wasn't really concerned about the French coming up there, because why would they? You know, they're across the Baltic Sea, and they have Denmark as a buffer zone. But they were wrong. They just simply crossed the Baltic Sea. So now Norway has a reason to join, and France will be forced to look elsewhere for their expansion. And what better place to go than finishing off the Balkans? Napoleon will declare war on all three of Bosnia, Serbia, and Kosovo, and his armies will enter in immediately, and will all be blown up by landmines. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but unfortunately these three countries are really no match for the French Empire, who is unstoppable at this point. At least for these guys, they're unstoppable. Serbia will be knocked out, and the three are gone. In this treaty here, we can see that Bosnia is split up, and Serbia is combined with the remainder of Bosnia and Kosovo. These guys are now a vassal, and Napoleonic France has one direction to look, and that is now east. A few months following their war against the Serbs, Napoleon will launch his invasion of Russia for the second time? Actually, I don't know. Yes, the Napoleonic Wars. The American education system did a really good job teaching me about that. But Napoleon's armies will exit from Belarus and begin their invasion of Russia, and their armies are doing extremely well against the Russians. The French will gain 3 allies in this war, being Ukraine, Finland, and Georgia, and this is what France was waiting for: help invading the big one, which is Russia. Now, of course, modern-day Russia probably wouldn't get messed up like this. I mean, Napoleonic France is extremely strong. You know, it's a combination of France, Germany, Poland, Italy, and Spain, which are all very strong countries. And that's not even all of it. You know, they have southern Sweden, they have areas over here in the Baltics, Belarus, Serbia, you know, the former Yugoslav countries. So it all adds up. And then you also have Finland, Ukraine, and Georgia on your side. And although they're not strong enough to take on Russia on their own, they do serve as a pretty good distraction. The French and the Finns meet up in St. Petersburg, and from there combine their armies to march towards Moscow. The spearhead is beginning, and it's very thick, and it is foundationally solid, meaning the Russians are not going to be able to push it back as it gets towards the gates of Moscow, which actually I think is way out here. Sorry, Russia is just so big, it's kind of hard to pinpoint their major cities. In the south, Ukraine is having some difficulties holding off the southern Russian army, which is doing some work against them, invading into the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Is that how you say those right? Luhansk and Donetsk? Because the Nsk at the end, that might not be right. I just might be a dumb American. Also, south Ossetia and the other one, Abkhazia. These guys, they are liberated by Georgia, but their armies will not advance into Russian territory. They're mostly just using this event as an opportunity to kick the Russians out completely. The Ukraine war apparently never happened though, because I didn't color in Crimea. But those aren't the main focuses. Finland and France are the ones putting in the work, as they are now entering into Moscow and officially capture the city, demoralizing the Russians. Finland will take over the Kola Peninsula and then start invading the northern parts of Russia, although they will mostly send their armies down south to help out on the front line where a big bulge of Russian troops is building up. And these Russian troops are able to do some damage against the French, going almost all the way over to the border of Belarus. Everywhere else though, it's not looking good, as Ukraine is able to retake Crimea, as well as kick the Russians out of Donbass. The French then start to march downwards, creating kind of an issue and cutting off a lot of supply lines for this group of Russians, who would then kind of have to fall back a little bit in order to resupply the troops in the north. And obviously they lose a lot of land with that, and then Ukraine starts invading from the south, and this is not good, so Russia will withdraw all of their army from this area, and the French will now march over towards Kazakhstan, hoping to split Russia into two, and that is exactly what they do. After Russia is split, they are once again extremely crippled by this event. Ukraine starts to invade from the Donbass area and from Crimea. Georgia starts to send troops out, and this is the high priority area. They want to wipe this out if they want to win this war. So they start doing that, and they do it very successfully, and it looks like Russia is going to fall. But everything goes wrong when the Allies joined in on the war. They were waiting for the perfect opportunity where France was vulnerable enough to attack, and now that all of their troops are over here in southern Russia, there's no time better than now. France was wary of this, you know, they weren't completely unprepared, but they will definitely be getting beat back at first. And the areas in which they struggle immensely are going to be over here in Iberia against Portugal, up north with Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, and in the Balkans where Romania, Bulgaria, and their allies are able to push into Serbia. Seeing that their empire is now being attacked, Napoleon will withdraw some troops from the front line with Russia, but it really isn't that big of a deal because they are able to finish off this area of Russia and force the government to sign a treaty with them. So Russia is officially out of the war and done fighting, and these guys are able to pull all of their troops back and send them back into Europe. At this point, Georgia, Ukraine, and Finland will continue to fight with the French, and things will get worse when Greece decides to join the war. They decide to side with the French because they believe they will win this war, and they don't want to be a part of a Europe where the French are their enemies. So, you know, they should probably sign with them. And also in real life, the Greeks and the French have, I think they have a defensive pact in place. So it kind of rolls up and makes sense. And Greece isn't too fond of North Macedonia. I think Albania, I could be wrong there, but I know they are friendly with Serbia. So there's a lot of connections there. What we see now is the fall of Sardinia and this Sicily. Yeah, Sicily. And then we see the Greeks invade up into Albania, taking over their capital, Tirana, I think. And then into North Macedonia and catching Bulgaria lacking as they take Sofia. We then see Ukraine start to invade into areas of Romania, going right through North Macedonia. That's not North, that's, oh my god, Moldova. You see, this thing doesn't work. It's fried. It's over. Back over in Central Europe, the French armies will now invade into Slovakia and Hungary, taking these guys out of the war very quickly. And then they will start to invade up into Denmark, but will lose all of their Swedish claims. Next up, we see all of the Danish peninsula fall, and they now resort over to Copenhagen. Estonia gets absolutely decimated by Finland, and the Finns then start to send their armies into the Norwegian-Swedish Union. France and the UK will duke it out in the English Channel, but it might all be for nothing. And that's because now Portugal is getting pushed back by the French armies, and they too will suffer invasion, losing Lisbon and eventually surrendering. Back over in the Balkans, the French are just too strong for these guys as they now push into Romania as a whole, taking Bucharest and causing both Romania and Bulgaria to surrender. Up north, Copenhagen falls, and now it's the UK and the Norway, Sweden versus France and their allies. You don't want to do that. So France will go over to the UK and say, hey, if you just drop it all, you know, let us do what we want, we'll leave your isles alone, and we might even give back Sweden's claim to Norway. And they're like, yes, okay, cool. But we have to sign a non-aggression pact saying, basically, you don't ever attack me, and I just let you do whatever you want. And France is okay with that. So they will now sit down at a treaty in Copenhagen, and we can go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. And in this peace treaty here, we can see that Napoleonic France has become essentially just Europe. They take over and annex Portugal into a vassal. They take over and annex Albania and Montenegro as their own, and they take over all of Denmark. Now, of course, there's still a bunch of vassals elsewhere, like over here, there's a new Russian state. We also see Hungary and Slovakia get made into Czechoslovakia and Austria-Hungary respectively. Maybe Napoleon is a little bit nostalgic. And you can see what all the allies took. Finland took some chunks out of Russia, and so did Ukraine and Georgia. And Greece got some land out of Bulgaria, North Macedonia. Romania and Bulgaria do still remain, although I'm not sure for how long. And the allies are disabled. And the UK and Norway, Sweden get out of this war without losing anything. In fact, actually, Norway and Sweden gains all of the southern Swedish lands back. But in exchange for that, you know, they lost Denmark. And yeah, so I have Napoleonic France winning this video. Now, futuristically, a giant world coalition that consists of like the United States, China, Russia, India would form to bring this thing down, because I don't think anybody likes it other than their allies. You know, they're expansionist, they're aggressive, and yeah, so this thing would fall eventually to the world as a whole. But if no major coalition formed, then I think they actually do stop here. Maybe they go after Romania and Bulgaria and Turkey, maybe Northern Africa, and then Norway, Sweden, but that's it really. I don't think Napoleon will want to expand anymore. They got their chunk out of Russia, and yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. All the support is greatly appreciated, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And of course, thank you to all our super fans. This includes Georgie Badev, Deathstrider X, Arentine, Hammertoad45, Connor the Gamer, Poland Country Ball, Nevada Garbage Trucks, and DW Cool Dude. Once again, thank you guys.